The night began like any other for Clara Reed. Just another double shift. She couldn't refuse. The Golden Table restaurant gleamed under chandeliers. A place where powerful men whispered fortunes over wine. Clara moved quietly among them. Steady hands. Polite smile. The poise of someone who'd learned that invisibility could be safety. She had promised herself she wouldn't bring Jamie again. But the babysitter had cancelled, and rent waited for no apology. So her 8-year-old son sat at the edge of the kitchen, reading an old picture book. Too wise for his age. Too gentle for the world that had already asked too much of his mother. Ethan Morelli arrived late, the kind of late that made people stand straighter. His presence filled the room before his voice ever did. To the world. He was elegance and power. To those who knew the truth. He was the quiet storm that kept Manhattan's underworld in line. Clara had heard his name in whispers, always followed by caution. Sometimes by fear. She never thought she'd serve him face to face. When the maitre d' handed her a silver tray, she steadied it like a prayer. But fate doesn't listen to trembling hands. The stem of a glass caught on the edge. Crystal met marble. Silence followed the shatter. For one breath, the whole restaurant watched her, the single mother who'd ruined a billionaire's table, before shame could swallow her. A voice said calmly, "It's fine." Ethan Morelli stood, removed his jacket, and bent down to pick up the shards himself. His eyes met hers. Not anger, not pity. Just a kind of recognition. The quiet ache of two people who understood the cost of keeping control. Accidents happen, he said. Then, to the others, enjoy your meal. Clara's gratitude was silent, but her heart kept repeating his words like an echo. Minutes later, Jamie slipped from the kitchen. Curious, as children always are, he wandered toward the banquet, drawn by the hum of unfamiliar sounds. 3 men near the bar were speaking softly, one in Korean, one in Russian, the third translating into Italian. Words tumbled between them like coins in a dark hand. Jamie listened and somehow understood every single one. His small brow furrowed. He heard the word champagne, the phrase before the toast, and then finish him quietly. The boy looked up at the table where Ethan sat, a glass already being filled with golden bubbles. Without thinking, Jimmy ran. His arm caught the edge of the tray. The glass flew, struck the floor, and burst into a spray of light. The room erupted. Guards. Confusion. Shouts in multiple tongues. Somewhere. A gun clicked. A waiter screamed. People ducked. And through it all, the boy clung to Clara, whispering. They were going to hurt him. Within seconds, 2 of Ethan's men had drawn weapons. The would-be assassins fled. A single shot cracked the ceiling, before silence returned. When it did, Ethan was staring at the child, the one who had saved him from a death no one else had seen coming. Later, when the sirens faded, Ethan approached them. Jamie hid behind his mother's skirt. "How did you know?" Ethan asked gently. The boy said nothing. He just whispered. "They were talking. I heard them." Ethan's eyes sharpened. "In what language?" "All of them." The boy said. Clara pulled him close. "He's just scared," she said. "Please. We'll go. We didn't mean any trouble." But Ethan wasn't angry. He was shaken. Something ancient in him recognized the miracle standing before him. A child who understood what most men spent lifetimes misunderstanding truth. Before it turned deadly, that night, the voiceover says, 3 lives collided: a mother who'd lost her faith in safety, a boy who spoke every language but fear, and a man who'd forgotten how to be human when they left the restaurant. Headlights carved the dark. Ethan's black car waited at the curb. He opened the door and said quietly, "You're not safe now. Come with me." Not a command. Not a threat. A promise. Clara hesitated only long enough to see the men in shadows watching from across the street. Then she took Jamie's hand and stepped into a world she never wanted to know. The night that began with broken glass ended with a choice that would change everything. The Morelli estate stood outside the city, surrounded by high walls and tall pines, a fortress that pretended to be a home. The gates closed behind them with a sound that felt final. Inside, silence lived like another resident. Cameras blinked red in the corners. Guards spoke softly in languages Jamie recognized but couldn't name. Clara tried to stay calm, but every room smelled of power and fear. She told herself they were guests, not captives. Yet the locks were on the inside. Ethan met them in the morning. No suit. No armor. Just a man in rolled-up sleeves, making coffee like any other person, trying to remember normal. "You can stay here until it's safe," he said. "No one will touch you." Clara wanted to believe him, but she had learned that safety was the prettiest lie. Still, Jamie trusted him immediately. Children often do when they sense a good heart hiding under bad history. Days passed. In a strange peace, Jamie wandered the hallways, listening. He heard Spanish in the kitchen, Russian in the courtyard, Italian over the phone. And somehow, he answered each speaker fluently without thinking. Word of the boy's gift spread quietly through the house. Some called him blessed. Others called him dangerous. Ethan watched from a distance, seeing in the child a reflection of his own lost innocence. The way Jamie laughed reminded him of a sound he hadn't heard since before his father's murder, the night a poisoned toast ended one life and created another. One evening, Clara found Ethan standing before a mirror in the hallway. His reflection, half lit. He was staring not at his face, but through it, as if searching for the man he used to be. "Can I ask you something?" she said. He nodded. "Why help us? You don't even know us." He looked at her, weary eyes softening. "Maybe I'm trying to remember what it feels like to do the right thing before it's too late." Clara didn't reply. She didn't need to. In silence, understanding grew roots. But peace never stays where money and power sleep. Late one night, Jamie woke to voices, whispering through the vent near his bed, harsh, hurried words in Italian. He pressed his ear close. Someone inside the house was offering information to an outsider, details about a woman and her son. A price was mentioned. Betrayal doesn't need translation. He ran to his mother's room, whispering the words. "Clara went pale," she told Ethan before dawn. By sunrise, plans had changed. "We leave today," Ethan said. "There's a place they don't know, a cabin in the mountains. It was my father's. It's the only place left. That means nothing to business." They drove north, trading neon for snow. As the road climbed, conversation fell away. The world became white and clean again, like a blank page. At the cabin, time slowed. Clara and Ethan found rhythm in simple things: cooking, cleaning, laughter that came easier than expected. Jamie spent his days on the frozen lake, tossing stones and counting echoes. One afternoon, while washing dishes, Clara asked, "Why do you always avoid mirrors?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Because I keep expecting to see my father there. The night he died, he was toasting our future. The champagne they poured for him was the same poison meant for me." Clara paused, hands in the sink. "That's why they tried again." He nodded. Power doesn't forgive survival. For the first time, she reached across the counter and touched his wrist. "You don't have to carry that war alone." Her kindness disarmed him more than any weapon ever could. Later that evening, Jamie came running with snow on his sleeves. "Mr. Ethan, come see, the sky's turning pink." Ethan smiled. Just Ethan, he said. And something small and vital shifted inside all three of them. Voiceover. Sometimes the walls we build to protect ourselves are the same ones that keep love out. Peace lasted exactly long enough to teach them what they stood to lose. It began with headlights crawling up the mountain road. Then the sound of engines. Men in black vehicles stepped out. Faces hidden. Footsteps heavy in the snow. Inside the cabin, Ethan told Clara to take Jamie to the cellar. He promised he'd come back. He always kept promises, even the impossible ones. Gunfire cracked the quiet. Jamie buried his face in his mother's coat. She prayed for silence. And when it finally came, it was worse than the noise. Then footsteps again, slower. Familiar. Ethan appeared in the doorway. Blood on his shoulder. Exhaustion in every line of his face. He sat at the table and let her clean the wound. The moment felt sacred in its stillness. He whispered, "You shouldn't have to live in my world." She met his eyes. Then build a new one. Outside. The snow kept falling, covering the footprints of men who would never return. That night, as the fire dimmed, Ethan made a decision that would change the course of his empire. No more revenge. No more blood for power. He sent a message through his network. The war ends here. And for the first time, peace wasn't just an idea. It was a vow. 6 months later, the world believed the Morelli heir had vanished. Newspapers called it disappearance. Those who truly knew him called it deliverance. In a quiet lakeside town far from Manhattan, Clara Reed taught English at a small community center. Jamie attended a modest school where no one asked questions about his past. They lived in a rented house with peeling paint and laughter in the halls. For the first time, Norma felt possible. On an evening soft with summer rain, a familiar black car stopped by the curb. Clara's heart skipped. She hadn't seen that car in half a year. Yet part of her had never stopped listening for it. The door opened, and Ethan Morelli stepped out. He looked different, not lighter exactly, but freer. The man who once wore power like armor now carried peace like it belonged to him. He smiled. "You moved to a beautiful place." Clara crossed her arms, unsure whether to trust the warmth in her chest. "You found us." "I wasn't looking to own," he said, "only to return something that never belonged to me." She waited. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a certificate for the Jamie Reed Foundation, a program for multilingual education and community rebuilding. "I sold half the holdings," he said, "turned the rest into this. The world taught me to build walls. Your son taught me to build bridges instead." Clara's throat tightened. "You don't owe us this." He shook his head. "You don't over. I choose." From inside the house, Jamie's voice called, "Mum, guess what I got into the gifted program?" He burst through the door and froze when he saw Ethan. Then his face lit up. "Ethan." He ran into his arms without hesitation. In that instant, the distance of class, fear, and history dissolved. There were only 3 hearts learning the same language, love, spoken fluently at last. That night they walked along the lake, the moon bright enough to paint silver paths across the water. Jamie skipped stones. Clara and Ethan followed slowly behind. Ethan rolled up his sleeve. The faint tattoo glinted under the starlight. "Amo restituit love restores." He looked at her. "It's the only language I still believe in." She smiled. "Then maybe that's enough." They stood there, listening to Jamie's laughter echo across the water. The sound was simple, but in it lived everything they had fought for: safety, redemption, and the kind of peace that doesn't need witnesses. Voiceover closing. Some gifts break curses. Some hearts rebuild empires. And sometimes, a single act of love translates across every language there is. The stars above shimmered like punctuation marks, to a story finally written right. If this story touched your heart tonight, share it with someone who still believes in second chances. Click like if you believe love can heal what time has broken. Leave a comment and tell us which moment spoke to you most. The glass that shattered, the promise that healed, or the peace beneath the stars. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories about love, family, and redemption. Because sometimes, all a heart needs is to be reminded it can start again.